Hello people, and welcome back to part 34 of Noveria, our vanilla Cities Skylines snow build. Hope you're all having a wonderful day, and thank you for all the support on Sunday's livestream. We had a nice time expanding the rural communities out by Somewhere. Brought in the first bus terminal of the series. We now have bus lines flowing around the city. They're kind of serving all the little rural orbital towns that we built, like Noveria and Overtharia, Somewhere, and now we have, I think this is where the heck here is it? Yes, yes it is, of course. And then we also built a little sewage treatment plant as well to sit alongside the highway over here, using some pollutive sewage assets, a little pumping station, kind of a boiler station to service some old, maybe more dilapidated infrastructure that's maybe on its way to being decommissioned. Really like the kind of rusty vibes that come with this boiler station. This is a nice idea. And yeah, thank you for the support. I really do appreciate it, as always. However, in today's build, what I want to work on is not something that's particularly functional. It's going to be kind of a silly build, something a little bit quirky, but still quite fun nonetheless, I hope. So we have this big mountain ridge here, okay, that kind of really dominates the city. You know, kind of everyone that grows up in Noveria grows up in the shadow of this mountain. And I want to try and build a kind of very secretive mountaintop research facility using a lot of the high-tech uniques and also the cathedral plentitude from Green Cities as well. You know, and everyone that lives in Noveria doesn't quite know what goes on up there. It's all a bit hush-hush, okay? A little bit of back pocket action, I think, is going to take place today. So we have this road over here, which flows out of the campus. So we built this many moons ago, and we did prepare this road to eventually go somewhere. And at the minute, we hooked it into a little residential area that happened on the live stream. But I think we're going to make this the entrance, right? We're going to build a tunnel. We're going to place some uniques. This build is going to need a ton of terraforming. So it's going to look horrifically ugly before it even remotely starts to look good. But I think we can pull it off today. So let's build peak 15, shall we? Alright, so the first thing I want to do is work on the entrance point to this thing. We can see where we've already actually placed in a road during our testing. So we'll grab level terrain, and we're going to come out at a height that roughly looks where the road will land, okay? Then we're going to dig out a little channel here, and also remove a little bit of this forest as well. Then come back into our roads, and we're going to grab industrial. That's going to be quite a key vibe to generating what we want to happen here. And then we're going to come out, and then we're going to come back down to earth. That's probably a nice idea to upgrade this into industrial road where we can. At least for the most part. Now, it might need a little bit of redrawing in, but that's okay. Happy with the little truss supports going over the canal too. That's not too bad. Yeah, I just need to redraw the highway to get that one in. That's fine. We'll do that in a second. And then maybe come out with a slight curve. Actually, maybe a little bit of freeform action. Okay. Then onto our angle. Then we're going to come down with the road length as well. And then we're just going to create a tunnel. So industrial road's perfect for this. Has these little air vents on it. Kind of looks like a little bit of secretive scientific research action, right? And then we're going to line this thing with a lot of oil fence. I think it's almost like we want to try and hide the entrance, right? So this will be the only road up to the facility, which I think should make it look quite isolated as well. I think it'd be quite a cool vibe to try and pull off. And then we'll place some of these larger cliffs around here too. And then lots of overgrowth, of course. Okay, so we kind of get a general vibe and aesthetic just by using the assets in this kind of manner, okay? So we'll see what we think of that. Wonderful. So now we'll head up, alright? And we're going to grab, again, a ton of terraforming here to try and get this to look somewhat sensible. So I think we're going to shave off the top of the mountain. Probably to about there should be okay. And then we'll start placing our assets. So as I mentioned at the start, this build is going to look horrendously ugly before it even remotely starts to look good, but I think we can pull it off. So again, we'll do lots of terraform. It's going to be incredibly expensive to terraform all this out. Okay. There we go. Very nice. So then we'll grab our road again. Of course, we'll be using all industrial road for this. And then the peak of the build is going to be this asset from the unique pool. This one right here, the Cathedral Plenitude, which is hugely dominant, right? It's a very distinct looking asset, quite a hard one to use as well. But I think once we get it to sit, obviously ignore the very flat plateau, we'll re-terraform that, but we can already get a vibe, right, of how this beast is going to sit on top of the mountain. It's really going to dominate the city. Should be quite an interesting aesthetic, I think, from up here. Okay, very nice. Cool. So, we'll leave that on in there for right now. And then I really want to complement the rest of this build with a lot of the high-tech content creator stuff that we haven't used yet. So stuff like the Development Studio, Semiconductor Plant, Robotics Institute, Research Center, and the nanotechnology. And again, I don't want them all kind of sat around this, right? I want it to be kind of tiered. So we're going to carry on with our terraforming, right? And then we're going to perhaps pick out another height, maybe on this ridge here, right? So we'll move down a brush size. And then maybe a little bit higher than that. Probably to about there, it's going to be okay. So hopefully today's episode is going to be a little bit of a showcase of how we can be a little more creative with some of the assets. You know, they don't always have to be used in downtown settings. You can perhaps add a little bit of story, a little bit of lore behind them. Okay. And again, what we'll do is, once we place in this next building here, so again, we'll just draw in that initial supporting industrial frame, and then let's go ahead and grab perhaps the semiconductor plant here. And again, you know, orientation is going to be extremely important here. So let's go ahead and maybe flip this onto its side so it's on the opposite lateral line. And we'll move that there. Okay. We'll hope start to come together. Now, of course, we want these hooked in with roads from tier to tier. So we're going to grab this top height and then just bring a little mountain slope up like this, okay? Just using our slope tool. Nice and simple. And then we can just use our freeform tool to follow the curvature of this. And then bring it up. Align it with that grid. And then head back in and snap. So we'll hopefully now see these tiers beginning to develop, alright? You can't even really see the semiconductor plant, but it's there, you know? It's there. So that's not going to be a bad start, I think, okay? Let's come back into our terraforming. I am probably going to have to let the game play here because we are going to run out of money again. It's going to be an expensive episode, this one. So I think we'll grab our next terraform layer out here. Again, so you can always use the curvature of those initial road placements to eye up where you want your next assets to sit, okay? So again, I think that'll be good. We'll place in, yeah, again, another little supporting road. Let's pick out another unique. How about the research center this time? Again, it's important that we check for more angles. Let's perhaps move our time of day along so they're not quite as in the shadow, so we can see them a little bit more. Move that longitude down as well. So we're already seeing it form. Again, we just want to come back into our slope tool, grab the height of the previous tier, and then just draw it up. And we can probably bring this one out and down here. Again, mountain snaps that road guideline, just so we can align with that next holding frame. Probably wants a little bit more terraforming at this side, so we can bring that road around to the side. In terms of power for this thing, I think we'll probably give it its own power source. I think the power lines trailed at the mountain might take away from it a little bit, so might squeeze in a geothermal plant somewhere as part of the build. Okay, but we're starting to see this tiered effect come into play already. To see what else we have to play with, the Nanotechnology Center is quite a distinct looking unique, and I think what I want to do with this one is perhaps place it on another peak, so it's only accessible via cable car. Of course, with the mechanics of the game, we will have to give it a road connection, so kind of, you know, garbage trucks can go up there and come and say hello to it. So I definitely want the Nanotechnology Center to be within its own peak. So we're going to grab some cable car lines, and I really want them to kind of flow in a straight line. So we'll eye up an initial placement of some cable car lines. Again, very tall, right? And then as long as it's flowing straight across this ridge, I think we're going to be okay. And then we'll just draw in an initial holding frame for the cable car stop to land at. We'll worry about its decoration at a later date. Looks like that's going to be fairly central. Yeah, that's going to be nice, and get a nice straight run across there. And then all the way over. So of course, because it is a building, it is going to need, you know, access to services and garbage collection. So we can't just isolate it on this peak because of the gameplay restrictions. But we can certainly give it a little hidden tunnel just so those services can actually get here. And of course tourists as well, but we'll just kind of pretend that they're scientists, alright? We'll have to use our imagination a little bit today. So we'll come in here, and then we're going to come back down to earth with our holding frame again. And we'll draw this in. Let's grab that unique. So yeah, we'll go for the Nano Technology Center. And again, we'll place this over on the mountain top on this side. So I think it'd be quite nice to surround this with some kind of open parkland and greenbelt. So we'll see how this kind of plays out. Let's have a look at our possible park options. Small parks would be the most appropriate, I think, but I also think maybe park with trees would also kind of work. So we can maybe surround it with some of these park with trees, okay, and then just use that base vanilla pathway to link everyone together. I think as well it would be appropriate to maybe use some of the natural disasters assets here as well, perhaps a deep space radar up here as well, maybe kind of just a little bit further down from this road. So we'll maybe see what we can do to accommodate that. Again, we're going to want to just terraform out a touch more room around the back of these parks. So you can see what I mean, right? This thing's going to look hideously ugly. These very obviously terraformed mountain slopes will need to be sorted out before we wrap up today. I want to make sure that we are perfectly behind the park assets too. Again, we'll just make sure that we move this one over. It's like it's out by a single tile. Let's make sure we prepare for that. Draw it in there. And again, that pathway is going to want to be reintroduced into the build as well. There we go. So I think the Nanotechnology Center is a very symmetrical asset within itself, so continuing to surround it with more symmetry is definitely going to help it fit into the area a little bit more, I think, as too. Okay. Very nice. Then why don't we grab a dirt road. Again, we'll come onto our freeform tool as we begin to navigate this mountain ridge. Some fairly treacherous roads today, right? I think I'm happy with that. Well, that's a little bit, a little bit too much, maybe. We'll see what we can do. All right, and then we'll grab the height where the road levels out from. Again, drawing that initial holding frame. And then we'll grab the deep space radar and place this beast over here. So again, it's kind of spreading across multiple peaks now, right? We're already starting to see it down from the city. There's obviously a little bit of secret sauce happening up at the top of these peaks, okay? But not too bad. I think we'll definitely box this in as well. Let's come back onto our terraforming. Box that in too. And again, just to kind of, you know, segment this away, let's come into our grid and surround it with just lots and lots of oil fence. You know, I think even if someone did manage to scale up at the peaks to come and see what's happening up here, they then have a perimeter fence to try and breach as well. Okay. It's a very unique build, this one, isn't it? I hope it ends up being somewhat enjoyable for you guys. It's not quite a typical Cities Skylines build, but it's a little bit of fun, a little bit of something unique for Noveria, isn't it? And again, we'll just want to line up with that end of line stop. Let's grab that out from there and then bring that in. All right. Not too bad. So I'll get everyone watered up, and then we can have a look at some more unique assets. Okay, so we'll resume placement of our next tiers, and again I think there's kind of a natural flow here following the ridge of the mountain top, so we'll terraform out another larger plateau for us to work with. Again, a little bit of holding frame action with an industrial road, and then we'll dive into probably the electric car factory, and we can maybe partner this with the Robotics Institute as well, but again, asset orientation is still incredibly important, so why don't we see if we can place this one just behind. So I think we can definitely get away with partnering the Robotics Institute and the electric car factory together. And similar as we've done last time, we just want to grab out that slope tool so we can hook in to the tier above. Nice and easy. I think we'll freeform down a little bit. And I think this will be the final tier, if you like, of the main research facility. So the next thing we want to look at is road connections into this thing, because of course people need to get here, and it's very much isolated at the moment. So I'm thinking we'll align the entrance road with the Cathedral of Plenitude, and we're going to relocate this just behind, okay? So we're just going to manually align this bridge here. We're going to come off road length as well. Again, we can just use the outer of the grid to judge a fairly central alignment, and then connect in either side from there. So we can get a nice centralization point. And I think once we rotate this to face the other side, we should have quite a grandiose entrance into the facility, okay? So that bridge is going to work nicely with the Cathedral of Plenitude in there as well. So now it's just a case of hooking this beast in, so it's probably going to be a lot of slope too steep to get this road to come all the way down. There should be a few little sweet spots where we can just squeeze through. There we go. Yeah, that's going to be fine. And then, yeah, we're going to want to perhaps introduce... Yeah, I think we will. I think we will bring in... So we'll just remove this initial detailing we did and reinstate it during our detailing time lapse, but I think it would be almost impossible to not include a toll booth here, right? To function as, you know, something of an actual security gate into the area. So we'll level out a lot with level terrain, not worrying about our placement or landscape at the minute. Again, so we're going to be tidied up during that detailing time lapse. Let's come back up to ground level. Then we want no angle snap. We'll come out to there. That should be fine. And then we'll grab the two-way small toll booth. Probably have to trim back a little bit of these mountain homes here. It actually looks like my district disappeared. This was green cities. That's strange. Not sure why that's happened. I'll have to rebuild that during today as well. Okay, and then again we'll just push back a tiny bit more of that mountain. So expensive. Quickly burning through the money reserves. Okay, and then we're going for road length for 10, and then we'll sink down into the earth. And that's going to be a slightly more aesthetically appropriate kind of entrance gate, right? And then again, we'll just terraform out around it to remove a little bit of the harshness. Right, but we'll worry about that during our detailing time lapse, of course. So we've had to do a little bit of terraforming just to get the mountain road to sit. Super awkward, and the tunnel is extremely convoluted. Just takes a few turns underground to get it to sit within that terrain, but it does allow connection into the rest of the area. We're also going to want to do something similar over here as well, of course. Okay, so we have all of the underground tunnels connected now. They're quite unrealistically sharp, but, you know, they're there really just for service connections. We don't really have to see them or worry about them too much. So we should be okay for the most part. I think I'm also quite keen to include a few more of the natural disasters service assets, especially the underground shelters. I think they'll work quite nicely here. They're almost as if, you know, there was a disaster coming to Noveria, then this is where the kind of the rich and powerful would be evacuated to, right? You know, they would be sent to Peak 15. But, you know, perhaps there's some kind of underground research labs that are happening here. And I think they're going to work symmetrically either side of the Cathedral Plentitude and the tunnel. So I think I'm relatively happy with that. And we can also bring in plenty of kind of radio masts to sit up here as well. There's a few of them where we can get them in. They don't require a road connection. And I think they're kind of a nice aesthetic decoration too. So we'll perhaps factor in a few of those during our detailing time lapse too. But I think we're okay for the most part. Alright. Cool. So we definitely want to give this thing its own power source. I think it would be a little silly to trail power lines all the way up the mountain. I think probably geothermal is going to be the most appropriate here. We'll see where we can perhaps tether this on. It looks like we can maybe squeeze it in alongside the semiconductor plant. So we'll just push out a touch more terrain. I'd highly recommend if you're going to be doing a build that's kind of this terraforming intensive, then 100% play with limited soil. I could not imagine doing something like this, having to dig soil out all the time. But again, you know, we have some smokestacks that are going to complement each other. So we can use the geothermal plant as an excuse to give this area its own power supply. And then it's just going to be a case of linking everyone through with the old faithful earthquake sensors at a couple of different points, okay? Maybe just want another one a little bit further down. And then just syncing everyone through. So the Natural Disasters DLC, actually quite useful in this regard. And that's going to keep all our attractions powered. And we already have our first visitor. Oh, it's a police car. How appropriate. How appropriate that's a police car, the first person up here. Very nice. Again, we can now factor in a road connection for the cable car line. I think what we'll do is just give this a simple box and then treat it as its own little kind of area, okay? There we go, a little bit something like that. And then just curve that in, and then we can trim off this end too. Okay, so I think that's the bulk of the assets placed. I think it is. Alright. This thing should look fabulous at night time. Seeing kind of all the peaks illuminated. It does, however, need an absolute ton of detailing. So I'm thinking what's going to be best here is bringing through lots of kind of very heavily fenced in pathways. So I'm going to come out with just some regular vanilla walking path. I'm using absolutely tons. I'm going to eat up a lot of nodes with the oil fencing in today's build, okay? And then just start giving everything quite a harsh fenced in border around the entire road network. Want a little bit of freeform here if we want. Back onto our straight road tool. And then within these kind of fenced in areas, you know, this is where we can come in with have all the overgrowth. And then maybe some rocks. A couple of trees up here as well. A couple of the old Noverian conifers and a few Palavan pines have maybe made their way up here too. So whereas it looks very bare at the minute, once we terraform out and, you know, detail it with fencing, should give us a much more desirable look, I think. And of course, we have to re-terraform all this out. We're going to do this by coming into our slope tools and just you know, bring in some kind of natural kind of slopage and ridges back into the mountain like this, okay? just so it doesn't look quite as unnaturally terraformed. To get that to fit in a little bit easier. Likewise over here as well, you know, just kind of bring all these down like so. So it's just going to take a little bit of work, but certainly something that can be done. Okay. Of course, bring in some cliff face detailing, and lots of kind of rocks around here to kind of sit up against the build. Obviously you have to be very careful with their placement, otherwise they kind of get a little bit bendy and a little bit quirky. And then bring power over to the Nano Technology Center too. And really similar vibes, again, around the back of this one. And then we can create that very heavily fenced in look with the, maybe bring one through the middle as well. Yeah, this will be fairly nice. Without deleting them, of course. And lots more kind of, you know, fence gardens, if you will, essentially what they are, right? Just to give all of this path network that relatively secure feel, with plenty of overgrowth in between them. Okay. And then with these areas over here, we can just expand out with some of those same trees. Okay. Just so it looks as though the assets are one. And I don't think it'd be totally inappropriate to connect into the pathways from this grid. Okay, so a couple of different ideas to continually expand this, and I think once it is detailed and re-terraformed, it will look dramatically better than it does now. It's a little bit obvious at the minute, I think, isn't it? All right. And I think what else we'll do is come into our Firewatch towers and actually drop in a few of these. And then with the fire towers, maybe just bring in some like dirt paths that actually trail back up to the peak. And treat these almost as like security outposts that sit along the slopes of the mountain, just in case anyone is trying to, you know, sneak their way up through the forest. There's, you know, these watchtowers to stop that from happening. If you really want to get into Noveria's lore. I think there's also a few assets from the medical tab that work nicely here as well, specifically the medical laboratory. This is a really nice looking one. And again, kind of ties into that whole secretive vibe, I think, doesn't it? It's also with a cryopreservatory would work nicely as well. Also centralizes outside. Okay. So, a few different options that we can get involved with. But otherwise, let's detail it up and hope we look good come the end. So we'll be right back. Okay guys, that is going to do it for today. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, likes, comments and shares below really help out my channel. Equally as much if you haven't enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a dislike as well. I am actually quite happy with this, really difficult build to pull off, lots of terraforming needed, and I think I've managed to restore something of a natural shape back to the very heavily terraformed mountaintops. And do hang around for the rest of the outro tag. There was a ton of detailing you guys wouldn't have seen, and this thing looks great at night time, sat up all illuminated on the mountaintop like this. It came out a lot better than I thought it would. But some very nice distinct vibes and hopefully maybe a little bit of inspiration for you guys as to how we can be a little bit more creative with some of the assets. And I think it's quite a nice homage to P15, of course, from Mass Effect 1. But otherwise, I will shut up and I will leave it there. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.